Alright, guys, welcome to Blue Pill Podcast. This is Abe, your host. It is Saturday, April 5th. I've been making a bunch of podcasts here lately, so tune in, you guys. Like I said, it's going to be a bunch of Blue Pill podcasts right now because that's what makes me happy, and that's what I feel like doing right now. So we've been doing game reviews on the games that I've been playing for the past couple months since I've been gone. Um, Today we are going to be covering Samurai Jack. Sorry, I wanted to find the actual cartridge so I could show you. So let me tell you honestly my introduction to Samurai Jack. First of all, I'm a huge fan of the show. So in this review, I'm not gonna lie. I've said it plenty of times on my channel. I am not someone who is hard to please. When it comes to any forms of media, and honestly, just in life in general, like you really have to. Here's an example: food. I can go through drive-through. My hamburger can look sloppy as hell. You know, it doesn't have to look like the commercial. My food can be a little bit cold. I'm not going to send it back to the kitchen. A movie. There have been... I'll tell you this. I'm a weird dude. Anyone who has watched my channel knows that I'm a weirdo. And I mean that in a good thing. So don't hit me up in the comments going, "Oh, Abe, you're not a weirdo," you know. I am. And I use it as a badge of honor, honestly. Like, when it comes to movies, I watch, like, movie reviews of movies that I've watched, and I've loved the movie. And they're like, "This was horrible," you know? And music. Same thing with music. Any form of media. Music, comic books, video games. I've played... Like, Ghost Rider is one of my guilty pleasures of video games for PlayStation 2. People hate that game. And I'm like, dude, this was like one of my favorite games growing up. I beat it like 3 or 4 times. Like, I loved this game. So I don't know. I'm just kind of a weirdo reviewer, honestly. Maybe it's, and it's not lenses of nostalgia. It's just, honestly, I'm easy to please, you know? Like, you really have to fuck up on a game for me to, like, hate it. So, first of all, coming out the gates, Samurai Jack does not have good reviews from other people. But how I got introduced to Samurai Jack was, I was a Cartoon Network kid. My wife was more of, like, a Nickelodeon and Disney kid. We grew up on Disney, like, cartoons and Disney movies, but... we grew up on them as far as, like, VHSs. We didn't watch Disney Channel. We did watch Nicktoons. We didn't like Nick at Night. We didn't like that. We liked the animated stuff. My family was really big. And I say my family as far as, like, me and my 3 brothers. We were really big on animated stuff. So, like, I like Hey Arnold. If we're talking Nicktoons, I like Hey Arnold, Rugrats, Wild Thornberrys. But for the most part, we always favored Cartoon Network more than Nicktoons. And it's actually kind of weird because this is a conspiracy channel. Like, if you actually look at, like, conspiratorially, Nicktoons has actually got more conspiracy type stuff as far as, like, the shadiness of the company and stuff. But we were always drawn more towards Cartoon Network. Like, and I just ended up watching Samurai Jack. I fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the brutality and the action of it, but also the serene, like, almost like Buddhist spiritualism of, like, the calmness and flow like water, you know. The art style. So, no one talks about this. I am a huge comic book nerd. I have like a whole chest of comic books. I'm sitting on probably like, I'm not trying to like brag or nothing, but I've been collecting since I was like 12 years old, and I'm 33 now, so I've been collecting for like 20 years. I have been collecting comic books. And Samurai Jack was inspired by an old comic book way back in the day called Ronin, and no one talks about this shit. And I looked it up because I'm like, dude, this is the exact same storyline of Ronin. A samurai from way back in the day ends up time traveling to the future. Now Ronin was made by Frank Miller, who created Sin City. He created a bunch of other works, but Sin City's what he's most famously known for. Sin City 300. So Samurai Jack took the storyline and honestly was inspired. They didn't steal it, but they were inspired by it. They took the artwork too. There's in art, because I'm an artist myself, so go check out. I put out some of my art. I put out a couple art videos of like my abstract paintings and stuff like that. I'm an artist. You know, I don't get paid for it. I'm not like amazing or nothing. But I think they call it cubism, like the very blocky, chunky style of artwork. If you look at Sin City, everything's like lots of squares and angles and cubism. They call it something else with an architecture, because if you think about Tartaria, it used to be smoother and stuff. I forget the name that they use. It's something crazy, but it's the same storyline. It's literally Ronin, and I don't know. I fell in love with it. Hang on just a second. And just because this is a podcast, you know, it is a review, but it's a podcast. Usually with my podcast, I choose like one or two subjects and try to keep it on that. I'm going to tell you a little side story. So, how I got introduced to Ronin. I was a huge Frank Miller fan, and I was collecting the Sin Cities, like the old school vintage and the graphic novel, like volumes. I love Sin City. To me, it reminded me of like Grand Theft Auto in comic book form. The movies are great. I wish they'd made a video game on it. It would have been so fucking cool. Like a free roam sandbox like GTA. But, so there was this, and by the way, if there's anyone watching, you can't get me for this shit. There's literally, it was like when I was like 17, 16 years old, so you can't get me for this shit. And I am a friend of Bill, so like I have tried to make amendments and shit. I need to make an amendment for this guy, man. Because there was this booth in it was a flea market, Peddler's Mall in Danville, Kentucky. And I can admit to it because I can't be charged for it. And I would honestly just pay in full. But there was a booth. They had the whole Ronin series, Frank Miller Ronin series. And I worked at Minute Mart. And I made like barely enough to get by. And I really wasn't spending my money crazy. You know, I really wasn't. My dad was like, "Where's all your money going?" And I'm like, "Dude, food at work. They don't feed you there?" "No, they don't." Like, "I thought you worked at a pizza shop." "Yeah, they don't feed us." The gas station I work for now doesn't feed us either. It's sad. You should feed your employees. Especially because half the food gets thrown out anyways. But I would go to this gas station, and I would budget my stuff. I'm really good at budgeting my money, even since I was a kid. And I would budget my money of like, I got $10, I can get as many comics as I can walk out. And most of the comics were only like a quarter a piece. But the Frank Miller comics, Ronin series, that Samurai Jack was based off of, was like $10 a piece, and they were in sleeves. The owner was never there. So what I would do was I would pick up a 25-cent comic, and There was main cameras there, but the guy actually installed an actual camera in his booth, and he never caught me. He never figured out who was stealing from. I was stealing, dude, and I'm not proud of it. It was horrible. But I would pick up a 25-cent comic, and I'd pull it out and pretend like I was looking at it, and I knew that the Ronin comic was here. So then I'd go, and I'd put on my acting skills, put it back in, and I'd slip it in front of the Ronin one, and then I'd dig around for a while, make my way back to that comic, and I would pull out the Ronin one, and I'd look through it, but I'd pull it out without pulling the sleeve out. I'd leave the sleeve in it, pull the comic out, look through it, put it to the side, then I'd pull the 25-cent one that I put there in front. It was all sleight of hand, and I'd look through it and go, oh no, and I'd swap them, so that way I was getting the $10 comic for a quarter, and the quarter comic would be charged $10 in the sleeve. Not proud of it, but I got the whole Ronin series. So Samurai Jack is based off Ronin. Let's go on with the review. So the game itself, honestly, dude, a lot of complaints as far as like the game itself was that it was very clunky, and it is clunky. But it's tolerable. So here's the issue. It was clunky, but it was tolerable clunky. And what I mean by that is, like, I've played far worse, clunkier games. And here, I'll show you, just because I do have my collection right here. I've played far worse, clunkier games. And I can show you two right now. If you've ever played this game right here, Hercules, which I'm going to do a whole review on this. Clunky. This is the most clunkiest, worst game ever as far as clunkiness. And the only reason I still have it is because I've actually made it up to like level 5, I think. This one is actually, we talked about this on my last video. I think it was my last video. I don't know, one of the previous ones earlier this week. Lion King 2 is clunky as fuck. It is so fucking clunky. So I've played bad, clunky side-scroll platformers, because Samurai Jack, Amulet of Time is a side-scroll platformer. But it's tolerable, and it's beatable. And I'm really not that good of a gamer, but I beat it. I beat it in 3 hours and 30 minutes. So, it's a very short game. I feel like playing it, you will have to take breaks. But it's beatable within one day. I wouldn't say one sitting. So, don't go out and buy a walkthrough. Do people even buy walkthrough books anymore? Probably not, but you will have to look up. Like, I had to look up at least 5 or 6 times. I had to look up, like, long plays of it. Of, like, what do I do now? Like, where do I go now? So you will have to do that. But the clunkiness, I can actually get over it. And I kind of get it, too, because I think it's a very Western mindset and a very Western idea that samurai and ninjas, for some reason, those two groups of people who actually, by the way, were like mortal enemies. The samurai hated the ninjas and the ninjas hated the samurai. But like, there's this Western idea that samurai, this Western, almost like, you know, not trying to be a liberal here, but like a white mindset that they were like, that the samurai would like jump around and do backflips and shit. No, they were more like stoic and more like, not trying to get metaphysical, but like more like stone like earthish, like stay more to the ground and grounded. They were more stoic, would be the perfect word. The samurai were more stoic. They were still smooth as hell, you know, and like slick as hell, but like playing the game, like, I don't know, man, like I felt like I was actually dueling, and I think people conflate that with clunkiness. Like, there's another game I have here that I'm going to do a review on one of these days. Let me find it real quick. Cutthroat Island. So, Cutthroat Island, you would be surprised, like, you have to actually use patience more. Because when you get in sword battles, there's all these multiple strikes that you can do. Like, for an A and B console, as far as like A, B, L, and R, that's A, B, L, and R, and the directional pad is all you got on SP. There's actually quite a bit of fucking moves that you can use on this Samurai Jack game. And there's a training mode. They start you off, you get teleported to an alien planet, and you're in like this like village, and you start off in like a monastery of whatever alien religion they have there. You basically, it tells you all the different maneuvers you can do, and they have you actually practice them and do them. So do the training. Don't just walk out the monastery. Actually do the training. Because it's insane how many different strikes and stuff that they use. And to me, it felt like growing up with my brother, we used to do Boken. Because he's really big into like Japanese culture and samurai and all that. I've always said I was more Ronin. He never liked that. He's like, dude, I know. And I'm like, what? Sorry, I'm a Ronin, bro. You can be samurai, that's cool. Ronin used to be samurai, but we said fuck the government, you know. But we would do Boken and stuff, and honestly, a lot of people, like, there's a very, like I said, like a white man mentality and Western mentality of, like, you just go in there and, like, like, hack and slash, and it's like, no, like, there's strategy to this shit, and I felt like I enjoyed that, actually, with the gameplay of, like, there'd be moments you'd crouch and upward strike. There's actually reverse strikes and stuff, so you'd flip your blade and, like, strike backwards, or do, like, a strike backwards with a bring it back to the forward. Because a lot of people don't understand that, like, with a katana, it's only forward strikes. So, like, if you're forward striking and you're bringing it back, you have to do almost like a figure eight and curve it. With a two-edged blade, like a white man's blade, you can forward strike and then bring it back. Because it's two-edged. Katana, there's only one. And the whole point of it is you flow with it. So, like, instead of just like, you know, it's like it's a flow, dude. So I loved it. Especially as someone who is a decent swordsman. Because I fuck around with swords. Katana and two-edge. I actually like both styles. Yeah, I liked it. And it makes you more, like, strategic with your battles. Like, you don't just charge into battle. You can, if you know the controls right, but I enjoyed, like, being, like, calm and learning the game, you know? So, I don't know, I heard people like, oh, Samurai Jack, he's not very, with the clunkiness, like, he's not like a ninja, and it's like, yeah, he's not a ninja, he's a samurai. You're supposed to be stoic, and figure out and look at your surroundings, and figure out, how can I jump up here, how can I do this, there's two enemies up here, I could come in, crouch, do an upward strike, like, I don't know, I dug it. So there is RPG elements, I felt like, with this game. And it reminded me, honestly, I reviewed Dead Man's Chest 2 days ago. Go check out that review. Because it reminded me of Dead Man's Chest. Like I said, the battle is more complicated and better, in my opinion, because there's more strikes and different styles of stuff. But, it felt RPG-ish as far as, like, you can collect rings, you can collect armor, you can collect, all sorts of things to boost stats. So, there is a little bit of grinding, but it's not overwhelming. I only had to grind for, like, I kid you not, like, there was only 1 or 2 parts in the actual game. It's only a 3.5 hour game. It's really short, which I'm going to talk about that later. But I only had to grind for, like, maybe, like, 15, 20 minutes. Like, it wasn't that bad, you know. And I'm the type of person, I beat, like, half the Final Fantasy games, so I don't mind grinding. I'm a maniac like that. I'm a crazy person, you know. So just keep that in mind. So I'm gonna delve into a little bit like here's the thing. So it is a side scroll platformer. Um but the battle sequences are actually pretty dope. Like it actually when you actually start battling and learning the controls, the battle sequences are fucking awesome and it actually feels like a hack and slash even though it's a platformer because it's so stylized. Um they could have done because there has been hack and slash games made for the Game Boy Advance, like the Lord of the Rings series, which I'm playing one of them right now. I'm playing Return of the King, so a little teaser. I'm gonna review that. Um, it's capable. Two Towers, same thing. It is like hack and slash on GBA. Um, I'm kind of glad that they did it the way they did, of not making it top down camera view, overhead, hack and slash. I'm kind of glad that they did do it side scroll platformer. Um, Especially when I say that there's like stylized strikes and stuff. I don't know. I think the game was it was one of the few, and I know not this last review that I did earlier today, but the review before, I know I did kind of rant about why is there so many side scroll games on GBA, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy, but this is one that I was like, actually, I'm glad you did that because if you want to play other storylines in the series, they've made one for PS2 that is actually like a hack and slash game. More like I said, LOTR, Lord of the Rings, more like Kingdom Hearts, you know. So if you want to play that, just play it on a different platform and it's a totally different story. You know, you can still enjoy both. I'm glad they made this one side scroll. I ain't gonna lie. This is one of the few times that I don't feel like side scroll platforming, that stylized method that they chose, I don't feel like it's a cop out like I have previous reviews. Um, I'm glad they did what they did, especially with the art. It felt like 2D ish, which is a good thing. Most people, when they hear like 2D is a bad thing, they're thinking like not artistically, but like I said, because it's stylized after Frank Miller, the 2D actually felt good. I was like, okay, cool, this is like 2D, you know? Kind of like the cartoon. So if you are like me, like I love storylines. Like I said, Final Fantasy is my favorite series. My second favorite would be, well, actually, times have actually changed. My first favorite series right now, last time I actually like kind of bumped someone down and moved someone up, Grand Theft Auto is my favorite series, but Final Fantasy, like I said, I've beaten half the Final Fantasies. I love Final Fantasy, and that's one of those game collection. I keep it separate from my actual big collection, because I will never sell those ever, ever. You know, I'm waiting for, because I will die before my wife because my health is worse than hers, and I'm a party animal. Like she's honestly a good girl. Um, she's gonna make bank when I'm dead off of my Final Fantasies, dude. And I purposely have left it to her, like, dude, these are yours. These Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasies in my comic book collection, and I've got some foreign currency locked up in my safe. Those three things, when I die, those are yours. You are going to make bank off of that shit. So be real careful with what you're selling. You're going to make bank. I promise you. I keep telling her, man. Just wait till I'm dead and then sell it, you know. But, what was I saying? So, Final Fantasy. Oh, yeah. Wait, no, I don't even fucking know what the fuck I was talking about. Oh, my God. Wow. My favorite collections of games, Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy. I have no clue what the fuck I was talking about. I completely apologize for that. So, what I was trying to say though is this reminds me a lot of kind of like a Zelda 2 clone, um, and a Simon's Quest. So, it's a side scroll platformer, but you still get to like visit villages and talk to people and interact with characters, and there's still a storyline going. That's what I was talking about, storylines. So I didn't find myself falling in love with the storyline so much. Honestly, the storyline was very generic, but that's not a bad thing. Because I am such a nerd and such a huge Samurai Jack fan, I found myself immediately falling in love with the game. Because, like, there's all sorts of, like, characters who, if you know the series and you've watched as much episodes as I have, like, I literally rewatched the whole series at least once past couple of years because I love it so much. And now that they've come out with the newest final season, I do want to rewatch the old ones because it's not as many as you think. Um, I do want to rewatch those and then watch the newest final season. But there's lots of like character callbacks, I guess, like cameos, like the Rothschild dude. Which, by the way, his name is Rothschild. He wears a top hat and a monocle, kind of like Bill Cipher. Sorry, Conspiracy Corner podcast, dude. I'm just saying, you know. There's also like he's in the game. There's also a level where you go through. It's one of my favorite episodes. I think it's like a 1 or 2 part episodes, but he goes. Sam Jack is going through the woods, and there's like these 3 towers that he has to pass. Like one of them's an archer, and they're like these little coyote people with wiggling ears and glowing eyes, and they're like super fast arrows. And I remember he puts his hand out for 1 second and pulls it back in, and it's like all these arrows. You have to actually do that again in this game, which I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, little callbacks like that, if you're a fan of the show, you're going to be like, fuck yeah, dude, I get it. Like, I dig this shit. So, you'll enjoy that if you're a fan of the show. So, here's something that I do want to talk about just for a second. Let me light a cigarette. Okay, remember when I told you earlier at the beginning of this podcast that I'm easy to please? This is something that I actually like, dude. So, there are so many games that I have played. I'm 33 years old. I've played a shit ton of games. And I've beaten a shit ton of games, dude. Even my wife sometimes is impressed, like, when I tell her, like, all the games that I beat. One day I pulled out all my Final Fantasies and I told her every single one that I've beaten. And she's like, oh my fucking god, like, this is insane. You beat all these Final Fantasies. And you guys know me, or know Final Fantasy, the series. Like, Final Fantasies are, like, long fucking games, you know? Like, and I would just beat them in a couple days. I'm a fucking maniac. But, so, the boss battles. The boss battles in this game, specifically, there are like 3 elemental giants, almost like titans that you have to fight. You have to fight like an ice one and a magma one, and they're in like caverns. One of them's like very Nordic, like a Nordic, not a fallen angel, not a Nephilim. I forget what they call them, but they're like almost like a Greek titan. Same concept, different mythology. You have to fight like an ice one, and you have to fight like this fire djinn. Dude, they were so fucking hard. So, on the last level, spoiler, you get basically a special armor that makes you like temporarily invincible. And Aku is actually, he's the final boss. You fight Aku. He's actually super fucking easy. Now this I am on the contrary. I actually love a final boss who is easy. Because my thing is like, dude, by the time you get to the final boss, for one, you're like terrified because you're like, oh god, here's the final boss. Like, they're gonna murder me. You're already going in with a negative attitude. This is just me personally venting, but I usually go in going, fuck, I spent like 20 hours on this game, maybe 30, maybe 40 hours on this game. And the last boss is here, and I always struggle with the last bosses on games. I don't know if it's because I go in with a negative mindset of I can't do this, but I love an easy last boss because you have already gotten this fucking far, and I can show you right now. There's like multiple games that I mean, I'm not gonna dig them out, but because it's my camera holder, but there are multiple games that I have literally played and gotten all the way to the ending boss, and it literally like digs at me. Like, I'm talking years later, I have like trauma from it of like, I got all the way to the end. Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events. Perfect example. That is one that I put in hours. I am literally on the last level about to fight Count Olaf. I'm this fucking close. I cannot get past the last level to go to fight him. And it's driving me nuts. I'm replaying it over and over and over. It's so fucking hard to get to Count Olaf, dude. And it's like, I'm right there. So when I get an easy final boss, I ain't gonna lie, dude. It's a guilty pleasure, but I'm like, fuck yeah, I enjoy it. So I'm gonna wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Honestly, and I know past 2 reviews, I'm gonna have to go with an 8 out of 10 again. 8 out of 10. Is it clunky? Yes. But it's tolerable, not aggravating. And I've given you the examples of like horrible clunky games. Yes, I'm easy to please, but I've played some horrible clunky games to where it's not even tolerable. It's just aggravating. Every time you put in that game, you're like, dude, I'm just mad. Which, if your game literally, if it's like Echo the Dolphin and you play it and it literally pisses you off, like, you didn't make a good game, company. So learn from your mistakes, whoever makes these games. WB made this one, which WB actually makes awesome fucking video games. Now I'm gonna have to say it, dude, and I'm sorry, dude. It aggravates me to death that people who review Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, they go, well, they're limited with their hardware. This game was too short. 3 hours and 30 minutes. Sorry, too fucking short. And the reason I say that, Link's Awakening, Final Fantasy, those games are long as fuck on the same fucking hardware. And actually, some of those, Link's Awakening is Game Boy Color and Game Boy. Some of the Final Fantasies are on Game Boy. People underestimate the hardware of Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy. You can play a game that's 30 hours, 40 hours long on a Game Boy cartridge. So I get tired of that excuse of like, oh, it's limited hardware. That's why all the games are so short. No, they're not. Sorry. Link's Awakening, super long fucking game on a Game Boy cartridge. Sorry, you're never gonna seduce me with your propaganda. It's possible to make it is possible they could have made this game at least 5 or 6 hours long. I did a review on Harry Potter earlier this morning. That game was 5 hours long. 5 or 6 hours long on Game Boy Color hardware. They could have made this game at least twice as long. Just saying. So it's bittersweet. It makes me so mad because I enjoyed this game so much. It's a bittersweet. It's not that I'm angry. It's a bittersweet of like, that's it? That's it? 3 hours, 30 minutes? That was it? Nah, dude, you could have made it twice as long. But, that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up there. I love you all. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm trying to get up to 500 subscribers, so please do. There's going to be a shit ton of content coming out the next 3 days, I hope. So, yeah, hope y'all enjoyed. Catch y'all later.